Hello? Oh, you spelt it right. That's really nice. Yay. People always put a P in it. And I'm like, oh, no. Hello, I'm Sarah. So I'm Director of Engagement here at the university. And you've got the pleasure of listening to me talk for about 7 minutes. So the first thing I thought I would do is start with a question. And the question I wanted to ask you all is, have you ever pretended to be somebody that you're not? So just by a show of hands, has anyone ever kind of like gone into an event, gone to do something, gone up and thought, I'm just going to fake it, I'm kind of winging it, I don't really know what I'm doing, I'm going to pretend to be something that I'm not. It's quite a common thing that I think we all do. I think it comes often from a place of feeling a little bit underconfident. It comes from a place of wanting to fit in. It comes from all of those things that you think, oh God, I'm just going to, if I copy that person, then I'll feel more comfortable. So the second question I wanted to ask you today is, how many of you would feel nervous if you were me right now, standing up on this stage right now, giving this talk? And I think the reason I ask that question is because I think it's important that I share that I also feel nervous. And what I find interesting about that is that you probably already know that, because so much of the way that we communicate is non-verbal. So you'll be able to tell by the slight tremor in my hand, by the slight fact that I occasionally catch my voice, that I am a little bit nervous being up on this stage here today. But what I find really interesting about that is when I share that with you, I ask you to think about, how does that make you feel? Do you suddenly think, oh, well, I'm not listening to the rest of what she's got to say. She clearly hasn't got a clue what she's talking about. She's nervous. Like, what's she doing up there? Why am I not on the stage? Why is she on the stage if she's nervous? Or do you actually feel a sense of connection? Because what I just shared with you was honest. And actually, ultimately, at its heart, we're human. And I think as humans, we really value honesty and we really value truthfulness. And we really actually connect with people more when they don't pretend to be something that they're not. And they actually share things with you that are true and are honest and about them. And I think that is at the root of where you find your voice, which is obviously what we're talking about today. I spent a lot of time as a teenager hiding my voice. I'm gay. I came out when I was at school. And before I did that, I found a lot of time pretending to be somebody that I wasn't and trying desperately to fit in. And actually, coming out was a bit scary. Didn't go so well in certain quarters of my life. But it put me into a place that, ironically, I felt less vulnerable. Because I think once you share the most vulnerable thing about yourself with other people, it takes their power away to kind of have a go at you about it, or to marginalise you for it, or to kind of really take your voice away from you. I think that when you are able to stand in that voice, to stand in that truth, to stand in who you really are, it's actually where you find your superpower. And I think some of the talks I've heard today that's exactly what people are talking about being authentic, about being you, about finding your voice. It's all those buzzwords that you hear. But essentially, for me, what that boils down to is being honest and being truthful. And believe me, I think that is where you actually find your strength. So that's my first message to you today, really, is to kind of be as truthful as you can, find that voice and stand in it and own it, and feel that power when you do it. The second thing I'd share with you today is about luck. Now, many, many years ago, I used to do a lot of creative writing. And I was a member of a creative writing club locally, actually. And it was full of people who wrote stories, wrote books, and were really keen to kind of get themselves published. And that was what they were aiming to do in their career. And we used to host things at this writing club where we'd get guest speakers to come along and talk about kind of working in the profession. We'd get publishers to come along. And one night, this guy came along who was a film producer. And he came to do a talk at the club, fairly standard, and it was packed out, you know, a bit like today, lots of people coming along who were really interested in the topic. And the first thing he asked the audience was, how many of you are script writers and want to write scripts for film? And I'd say about 75% of people who'd come to that talk wanted to do that. And the second question he asked the audience was, how many of you have brought that script with you today? And no one put their hand up. And he said, you bunch of idiots, I'm a film producer. What do you think I do? I produce films. Why have you not brought your film script with you? And he said, how do you think luck happens? It's when you're sitting in your bedroom being a genius at 3 o'clock in the morning after too much Red Bull. No one's discovering you like that. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to create your own luck. You've got to talk to those people even if it makes you uncomfortable. You've got to do that cringy thing at a talk when you go up to someone and say, you're a film producer, I've brought my film script and I know this is really cringy. Because it might be the film producer that actually produces your film. So that really resonated with me. Now, I don't want to be a script writer, but it just stuck with me that actually that luck thing is so true, that you putting yourself into those situations, engaging with the right people, using those opportunities when they come up, not relying on someone else to make that luck for you, but really looking to yourself, can actually be quite powerful. And it's something I've definitely used in my career in terms of who I network with, turning up to stuff, meeting people. So that's my second tip. And my third tip is about consistency. Now, my colleagues here today will know that I'm a runner. And if you know any runners in your life, family or friends, you'll know that at any opportunity we will segue it into a conversation. And you've given me a microphone, so this is really stupid. But the reason I wanted to talk a little bit about running today is because actually it's taught me possibly the most fundamental lesson of my career to date. And that's about consistency. So I only started running maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, and I wasn't a natural runner. I looked at other people running and I was just super impressed. I thought, how do you do that? I literally walk up to the top of my stairs and I'm like, ugh. And I had a colleague who'd run a marathon, and I just looked at him and thought, 26.2 miles, this feels completely out of my reach. I first tried running. I was on holiday abroad, and I saw all these wonderful people in their bright colours running up and down the pier, and I thought, brilliant, I'm going to try that. Well, as a really inexperienced runner, nobody told me that you shouldn't eat before you run. So I did, and then immediately sprinted to a toilet, because that's basically what happens if you run when you're full of food. So that was my first experience. You think it had put me off, but actually, what it sort of started in me was a fire that here's something I can't do, but here's something I want to be able to do. And how do I actually go about doing that? So I researched it. How do you learn to run? You do a couch to 5K, everybody knows that. So I did that, and it wasn't easy, believe me. But I did that first 5K, and actually I was happy with that for a couple of years. And then I thought, what else could I do? I'd quite like to run a 10K. Okay, I will learn how to do that. And I honestly promise you, the first time I tried to run further than 5 kilometres, I couldn't do it. So I went back to the drawing board and I said, okay, I'm going to run 5.1, and then I'm going to run 5.2, and then so on, so on, so on. And I got to 10 kilometres, and I thought, I never, ever, ever thought I'd be able to do that. What else can I do? So then I did a half marathon, and actually this year I ran 2 marathons. Now, there is nothing special about me. I'm not a particularly good runner. I'm not particularly fit. I'm not particularly healthy. I just really wanted something. And the lesson that it really taught me was about consistency. If I'd have got up that morning of that marathon that I ran for the first time in April, having not built up that training day after day after day after day, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But I got up every day for 6 months, and I ran, and I did a little bit further than I'd done the day before, and I taught myself about how it worked. I learned the lessons of that didn't work very well, that fueling didn't work very well. And the one thing I would say is, for things like that, motivation won't actually get you very far, because you feel motivated about 2% of the time. And actually, willpower won't get you very far, because you have willpower to draw on, but it is a finite resource. What gets you there is consistency. What gets you there is doing things when you don't want to do it, is building a habit, is going out in the rain. That was the case for me, is thinking, I have to do this if I want that goal. It's not going to feel good today. It's going to feel pretty awful today, but it's building those blocks that will get me to that place that I want to be. And honestly, people had taught me, I'd been to talks like this. I'd heard so many people talk about consistency, and I was like, yeah, I need to build habits, whatever. And running honestly taught me that that was the one thing that made me actually look back and go, do you know what? I was here, and I got to here, and it wasn't overnight, and there was up and down and back and forth, but actually what got me there was that getting up every single day and doing it when you don't want to. So they are the 3 things that I would leave you with, which the first one is truth, finding that voice, not being afraid to be who you are, using that as your superpower. The second thing, luck, And don't rely on other people, make it yourself, put yourself into those positions where you can. And consistency, just keep doing it, keep getting up day after day after day, even when you don't want to, and keep that end goal in mind. And I promise you, it will bring you success. Thank you for listening.